The wind howled through the mountain pass like a wounded beast, carrying snow sharp enough to cut skin. Elijah Boone had lived alone in the high country for nearly 20 years, long enough to know that no sane soul traveled these trails once winter tightened its grip. When the knock came at his cabin door, faint but desperate, his hand went instinctively to his rifle. Out here in the 1800s Wild West, mercy could cost a man his life. Another knock followed, weaker than the first, and then a woman's voice cracked through the storm, begging for shelter. Elijah pulled the door open just enough to see them. An old woman stood bent beneath the snow, her face carved with hardship, two young girls clinging to her skirts like frightened deer. The children's lips were blue, their eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. They would not survive another hour in the cold. Elijah stepped aside without a word. The warmth of the fire hit them all at once. The girls collapsed near the hearth, while Elijah worked quickly, wrapping them in furs, forcing warm broth between trembling lips. The old woman hovered close, watching him not with relief, but with fear, as if kindness itself had betrayed her before. Only later did she speak. Her name was Margaret. The girls were Clara and Ruth. Sisters left orphaned after fever took their parents along the wagon trail. Margaret had promised her dying daughter that the girls would never be handed over to strangers, never sold, never used. Elijah understood more than he let on. In the Wild West, orphaned girls were currency. Men hunted them the way wolves hunted calves. They stayed while the storm raged on. Days passed in the small cabin, filled with quiet moments Elijah had not known he missed. The girls laughed softly at his clumsy attempts to cook. Margaret's strength faded with each sunrise, her cough growing deeper, her hands shaking even when the fire burned hot. On the fifth night, Elijah woke to silence. Margaret lay still, her eyes open, one hand gripping his sleeve. With her last breath, she made him swear to protect the girls. By morning, the mountain claimed her. Elijah buried her beneath a cedar tree overlooking the valley. The ground frozen hard, his hands bleeding by the time he was done. The riders came that afternoon. 3 men rode up the narrow trail, clean coats, full bellies, eyes too sharp. They claimed to be searching for 2 missing girls from a broken wagon train. Elijah stood in his doorway, rifle steady, his voice flat as stone. He told them no one had passed through. The men smiled the kind of smile that promised they would return. That night, Elijah made a decision that would change all their lives. Before dawn, he packed what little he had and led the girls into the high pass, known only to trappers and men who wanted to disappear. The journey was brutal. Snow tore at their boots, hunger gnawed at their bellies, but Elijah never faltered. He taught the girls how to read tracks, how to listen to the land, how to survive. He did not speak of the past, and he asked nothing of the future. When spring finally broke the mountains, they reached a hidden valley, untouched by roads or greed. There, Elijah built a new cabin, stronger than the last. The girls grew into women who feared nothing and no one. Years later, travelers whispered of a remote valley where 2 women ran a trading post with steady hands and sharp eyes, protected by an old mountain man who still watched the ridgelines at dusk. All because, one winter night, a man who trusted no one chose to open his door.